Hello, I've decided to make a video. The reason I'm doing this is because I'm trying to find things to do. At the moment, things in this country are pretty grim. We're in the middle of a pandemic and it's affecting 185 countries throughout the world. But we are in lockdown. I am self-isolating and I've been doing that for 5 weeks now. I haven't been out of the house. So I've got to thinking about when I was little and I was growing up during the war. So I decided to do this and tell a few stories, things that you might be interested in and you might not. But anyway, here goes. It's the 23rd of April and it's 2020. And it's a beautiful summer day and it's been like this for a long time. Although it's just early spring, it's more like summer and it's absolutely beautiful. But because of the situation, not many people are able to go out in their gardens. In fact, a lot of people live in flats, so they don't have gardens, but I'm fortunate that I do. So here we go. I don't know if I'll make another one, but in case I do, this will be video number 1. Right. I was born in 1939 at the beginning of the war. War broke out in October 1939. In fact, one of my doctors said it was my fault because everything was fine until I was born and then all hell was let loose. I think he was joking, but never mind. But growing up through those times, we still had a happy childhood. Although all these things were going on, we didn't really feel that it affected us at all, apart from rationing books, where we couldn't buy anything without a little coupon that we had to cut out of a book. But nevertheless, our childhood was happy. So just me and my 2 brothers and mum and dad. I think my earliest memory was when I was about 18 months, 2 years, no more than that. And I can remember I was sat in a baby high chair and I saw a mouse, and this little mouse ran along the skirting board and disappeared in the cupboard. And I was too young to be able to say that I could see a mouse or what I was pointing at. All I could do was just point. And I just couldn't tell them what I saw because I was too young to talk. So that's my first memory. The next memory was when my brother was born, Andrew. He was born in June and I was 2.5 then. And I went to stay with an aunt in the next village. And when I came home, I was delighted to find I had a little baby brother, which was great. Then 2.5 years later, I went to stay with my aunt again. And when I came back, there was another baby. And this is my little baby brother, Roy. And I thought this was great. But every time I went to stay with my aunt, I expected to come home and find another baby. But no, I only had 2 brothers. And that was it. But we weren't really aware of the things that were going on. I can remember sat on someone's lap at home in the blackout, and the sirens would go and the curtains would become closed and the black paper roller blind would be pulled down and we'd sit in the darkness while the siren was going. And the reason for this was because any aircraft coming over would see a lot of lights and know it was a town or a city and they would start bombing. So we had to sit in the dark so that wouldn't happen. But we weren't scared. I wasn't scared. It was just part of life then. Another thing I can remember is the soldiers marching down my road. And I can picture them now, all these soldiers marching past. And one came over and gave me a hug and carried on. And Mum said, that was Uncle Jack. Anyway, that's another nice memory. Another one I can remember, which wasn't quite so nice, I suppose. I was stood on the doorstep looking across at the sky, and the sky was red. And my mum said to me, that's Bristol on fire. And even then I wasn't frightened. It was just something we accepted. Another time I can remember I was woken up in the night. I don't know what time, but to me it was in the middle of the night. And my mum wrapped a blanket round me and brought me downstairs. She said, I'm bringing you downstairs to see Uncle Frank. Well, Uncle Frank was in the RAF, and he apparently only had a 24-hour pass, and Mum wanted me to see him. So she brought me down and I sat on his lap and I had a hug from Uncle Frank. And he brought with him a tin of biscuits, and they were biscuits that were issued to the services. And they weren't very nice, really. They were more like dog biscuits, but I enjoyed them because Uncle Frank gave them to us. So that was a nice memory too. Now what else can I remember that age? I can't remember an awful lot, but I can remember on bonfire night we would have a Guy Fawkes. Mum would make a Guy Fawkes, but I didn't know it was called Guy Fawkes. I just called it Hitler. So when we had a bonfire, to me, we were burning Hitler. And that's how I saw it anyway. But my two brothers and I, we had nice times. When the weather was nice, we would take a bottle of water and a sandwich, and we'd go for a walk all across the fields. And across the fields from where we lived was a hill, and it was called the Folly. We would walk up the footpath to the top of the Folly and then go all across the fields from one field to another until we came to a little stream, and we'd try and catch fish, but it was pretty hopeless, so we just took our shoes and socks off and went for a nice paddle. And we would spend all our summers like that up in the fields. We always came back when we were hungry and it was about tea time, so that was a nice memory. Another time I can remember my mum and my two brothers and we decided to go to a place called Embra. And there was a big pond there, and we just called it Embra Pond. We would take a jam jar with us and see if we could catch tadpoles. Well, we didn't catch any tadpoles. We caught little baby frogs. And on the way back, I dropped my jam jar on the bus, and little baby frogs were hopping all over the bus. And I thought it was funny, but a lot of other people didn't. Now, when we were a bit older, we went to London on the train and the underground, and then on to a place called Watford to visit an uncle that my mum knew when she was little, when she was growing up. And this uncle was called Uncle Fred, and he was completely deaf, and he could speak, but it was very difficult to understand him. But I could understand him and he could understand me. I think it must have been about 10 then, perhaps 8, 9, 10. And Uncle Fred had a field where he would grow fresh veg and fruit, and he also had a horse in a stable in that field and a cart, and every morning he would load up the cart with his vegetables and fruit and go round the streets selling to the people in the houses, and they would come out and some would give the horse a sugar lump or a bun or something like that. And I would go with Uncle Fred, and I would sit upon the cart where he did what he had to do and serve the customers. Oh, it was like a little covered wagon, so if it rained it didn't matter because we were covered. And he would also have oranges, which obviously he didn't grow, but he would get them from somewhere, and so he would sell the sort of thing that you couldn't normally buy quite easily, so he would get them. And we would go round the streets until we got to the end of the day, and then we would go back to the field and stable the horse, and Uncle Fred and I would walk home together holding hands. That was a nice memory. I'm trying to think of something else that you would find interesting. I can't really think of anything more at the moment, so perhaps we'll say that's enough for today. I'll have to think some more, put my thinking cap on, and think of other things that you might find interesting. So I'll say bye for now, and we'll call this episode 1. Bye!